Bandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Bitam Sya Om Agyanatimrandasya Gyanajana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwa Gurunsha Divyat Bhagavat Premna Vibija Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balarka Shalanshitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shubharam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishvara Shridharam Vanshakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So reading from Sri Chaitanya Bhagawat by Srila Vrindaban Das Thakur with translation by Sarvabhavana Das. And this is Antya-khanda, chapter 4, the pastimes of Achyutananda and the worship of Madhavendra Puri. So this we're at where Mahaprabhu was going to Vrindaban, but then he suddenly turned back, going towards Nilachala, but he stopped at the house of Advaitacharya, and a messenger was sent to bring Mother Sachi. Another amazing symptom was that when Sachi Devi began to tremble, it was as if someone were repeatedly lifting her up in the air and hurling her down to the ground. No one other than Sri Sachi Mata could exhibit such ecstatic feelings of Krishna Prema. Sri Chaitanya is certainly the unlimited reservoir of love of Godhead, Sri Krishna. He has also infused into Sri Sachi Mata that same spiritual loving potency. Therefore, who can fully describe the various ecstatic transformations of Sachi Mata? Day and night, she was fully immersed in an ocean of devotional bliss without a moment's loss. Devotional bliss without a moment's loss. All her activities were devotional service to Sri Krishna. Occasionally, when her consciousness would focus on the external reality, she would perform worship to her deities of Sri Vishnu. Fortuitously, when Sachi Mata was thus engaged in her deity worship, the messenger from Shantipur arrived. The messenger said, Sri Gaurasundar has come to Shantipur. Come, Sri Sachi Mataji, let us go right away to see him. The news deeply moved Sachi Mata into a state of overwhelmingly placid bliss. She was indescribably contented. The word soon spread and the devotees became jubilant. Gangadas Pandit, Murari Gupta, and all other beloved devotees of the Lord immediately accompanied Sachi Mata to Shantipur. When Sachi Mata and the devotees arrived in Shantipur, the news was quickly brought to Sri Krishna Chaitanya. The Lord rushed to meet his mother. When he saw her from a distance, he fell to the ground like a rod, offering obeisances. Chanting many verses, he circumambulated her repeatedly, offering repeated dandavas. He prayed, you are the universal mother, the embodiment of pure devotion, transcendental to all material inebriety. Just by your gentle glance alone, the living entities can develop love and attachment for the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. You are the personification of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, and have the potency to fulfill the desire of everyone. In fact, you are Ganga Devi, Mother Devaki, Yashoda, Devahuti, Prishni, Anusuya, Kausalya, and Aditi. They have all emanated from you and will fully merge in you. You dwell in everyone's heart. Who can describe your transcendental glories? In this manner, the Lord chanted eulogies, falling to the ground in joy, offering his loving obeisances. Who other than Sri Krishna himself can exhibit such extraordinary heights of devotion to his father, mother, guru, and all superiors? As he offered obeisances and chanted prayers, his whole body was bathed in ecstatic tears. Sing her son for the first time after such a long interval. Sri Sachi Mata became inert with ecstatic bliss. All the while the Lord sang verses of praise. She remained stiff in spiritual shock like a wooden doll. The Lord continued exuberantly. Whatever devotion I have for Krishna is only due to your grace. All the millions of the Lord's servitors who have even the slightest relationship with you are dearer to me than my very life. Anyone who simply remembers you will become free from all material bondage. Ganga Devi and Tulasi Devi are famous for purifying everything by their mere touch, but even they are highly privileged to have your association. You have used so much time, energy, and love to raise me from birth. Your affection has cushioned me at every step of my life. I will never be able to repay this incalculable debt of love to you. Only your very own wonderful qualities can counteract this burden of debt. The Lord felt a special satisfaction in glorifying his mother, and hearing the Lord, the devotees experienced deep transcendental joy. Sri Sachi Mata, or I, as she is more popularly known, knew that her son was Narayan, the Supreme Lord incarnate upon earth, and so understood that whatever he wished he could say. Sri Sachi Mata then spoke, "Who can understand your words? Logs in an ocean are tossed about and drawn away by the waves, not having any control of their direction. Similarly, without any volition, the living entities in this material ocean are being swept away by the waves of your illusory potency. My dear son, I can only say that whatever you do is for the good of all. I see you are praising me and offering obeisances to me, but I only understand that you are independent, therefore you can act as you wish." The devotees greeted the words of Sachi Mata with spontaneous appreciation. Who can actually glorify the extent of Mother I's devotion to the Supreme Lord? From her glorious womb, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Gaurasundar, appeared. Even if someone speaks the name I without proper understanding of its spiritual significance, still by the transcendental potency of the word, he is alleviated from all suffering. Sri Sachi Mata's heart was filled with immense satisfaction upon seeing her son. The devotees were swept away by tides of trembling ecstasy. To fully describe the joy that permeated the gathering is impossible for a puny mortal. Seeing the satisfaction of Mother Sachi, Nityananda was overwhelmed by bliss. Advaitacharya, whilst reciting prayers to Devaki Devi, offered repeated obeisances to Sachi Mata. All the devotees like Haridas, Murari, Sri Garbha, Narayan, Jagadish, Gopinath, and others were most blissfully affected by her joys. Whoever reads and hears these ecstatic narrations is enriched with the jewel of love for Krishna. Advaitacharya came to Sri Chaitanya and took permission for the fortunate Mother Sachi to cook for the Lord. Mother I went to the kitchen with bubbling joy, thinking, I am cooking for my Gaurachandra, who is the Supreme Lord Narayan. Innumerable items of food appeared as if by magic. Many of the preparations she cooked are unknown to me, and so I have no name to describe them. Sachi Mata knows that the Lord loves to eat shak, spinach, so she turned out 20 varieties of shak. In fact, each vegetable was prepared in 10 to 20 different ways. After cooking, she brought all the dishes and placed them neatly in the dining hall, putting some tulasi buds on each item. In the middle of the room, she spread a very nice sitting mat for the Lord. The Lord came with all his associates to eat. When he saw the elaborate arrangement with the countless dishes, he fell down and offered dandavats. The Lord exclaimed, "Leave aside partaking of these foodstuffs. Just by seeing this transcendental food, one becomes freed from all material entanglement. How can I adequately glorify the quality of this cooking? In fact, simply by smelling the food, one develops pure devotion to Sri Krishna. I can now understand that Sri Krishna himself, along with his associates, must have already tasted this delectable food." The Lord then circumambulated the bhoga, foodstuffs, and sat down to eat. Taking permission from the Lord, the devotees also sat down to see him eat. As the Lord of all the Vaikuntha planets ate, the fortunate mother eye feasted her eyes upon him. He tasted every single item that was there with childlike relish. Yet amongst all the dishes, the Lord preferred the different types of shak, spinach. He ate from these preparations again and again. Thus the shak gained the special favor of the Lord. The joyful devotees were thoroughly enthralled upon seeing the Lord constantly returning to the shak. The Lord then began to explain the esoteric efficacy of eating shak. The Lord smiled and said, "This shak here is known as Achyuta. By relishing this shak, one quickly develops a special attachment for Sri Krishna. The result of eating pato, vishtuka, and kala shaks is that one attains the association of pure Vaishnavas birth after birth. By eating Salincha and Helancha shak, one is not only free from diseases, but achieves the platform of pure devotion to Sri Krishna." The Lord ate beautifully, and in between mouthfuls spoke of the transcendental nature of eating the different kinds of shak. That day, while the Lord took prasad, everyone experienced such spiritual ecstasy that only Sri Anantasesha knows the facts in detail, and he is now constantly describing them with his thousands of tongues. In Kali Yuga, the same Sri Anantasesha, the support of the three worlds, has now appeared as Sri Nityananda, the Avadut. All the sutras that I write are simply pointers given to me by his grace. In the future, Srila Vyasadeva and other great sages will explain them all in detail. Anyone who reads and hears these descriptions becomes free from the darkness of ignorance. After this pleasurable experience of eating, the Lord got up and cleansed himself, rinsing his lotus mouth. As soon as he left his seat to wash up and then sat down elsewhere to relax, the devotees pounced on the Lord's remnants and joyfully began to eat. Someone said, "Why should a Brahmin take these remnants? I'm a Shudra only. I have the right to eat this." The other replied, "I'm not a Brahmin." Many just slipped in through the crowd and taking a handful of prasad, dashed away. Someone said, "The Shudras are not eligible to eat remnants. Try to understand this by analysis. It is already stated in the scriptures." In reply, another said, "I do not want any remnant food. I just want the food vessels." Yet another devotee said, "It has always been my duty to throw away the Lord's leaf plates, but now you are forcibly taking the remnants, simply showing your bossy natures." In this way, the devotees playfully used all cunning and any means to steal some of the nectarine remnants touched by the lotus mouth of the Lord. Considering that the food was cooked by Mother Eye and then respected by the Supreme Lord himself, it was hardly surprising that everyone was so greedy for such nectar. Happily licking their fingers after eating, they washed up and returned to sit in front of the Lord. The Lord looked at the devotees sitting around him and spotted Murari Gupta. The Lord smiled and said to him, "Murari, I've heard that you have composed something about Lord Raghava in 8 verses. Please read it." Murari then began to read the verses in Sanskrit as if in a trance of ecstasy. These are the verses. "I constantly serve the lotus feet of Sri Ramachandra, the spiritual master of the 3 worlds, whose brother Sri Lakshman is Sri Ananta. Always walking in front of the Lord, Lakshman, with a bright golden complexion, is dressed in opulent kingly attire. He is a most expert archer and always meditates upon serving his older brother, Sri Rama. I constantly serve the lotus feet of Sri Ramachandra, the spiritual master of the three worlds, who slew Kara, Trishira, and Kambanda, thus clearing the idyllic forest of Dandakaranya of mischievous demons and making it pure and glorious. Killing the enemy Bali, he befriended Sugriva. In this manner, Murari Gupta recited all the 8 verses, and then upon the Lord's instruction, he began to explain the meaning of the verses. Murari explained, with a complexion like that of fresh durva grass, he is seated smiling benignly upon a majestic gem-studded throne. Sri Janaki Devi, Sita, is on his left. He is the supreme archer, teaching all the art of archery. He is the desire tree, who more than fulfills all the yearnings of his devotees. His younger brother Lakshman is Sri Ananta Sesh, and is constantly absorbed in serving his elder brother, Sri Rama. Walking everywhere ahead of his elder brother, Lakshman is an extraordinary archer, lustrous, with a golden complexion. He dons a stately golden robe. Sri Ramachandra, the pride of the Raghu dynasty, is the supreme teacher of everyone. I worship his lotus feet birth after birth. Bharat and Shatrugna fan him with whisk, and Hanuman and his army of monkeys kneel with folded hands, singing of the glorious activities of their Lord. I pray that birth after birth I may sing of his transcendental activities, for it is he who graced and befriended Guhaka Chandala, who belonged to the low caste of dog-eaters. The Lord willingly renounced the kingdom and crown upon the instructions of his guru, and then lived in the forest to perform divine deeds. He killed King Vali, and mercifully offering his friendship to Sugriva, he made him king. Everyone should take shelter of his lotus feet, for he is the Lord of all the three worlds, and he kindly liberated his devotee, Ahalya. All should worship the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, who built a bridge across the ocean with the help of Sri Lakshman and the monkey army, and then killed the demon king Ravana, who was powerful enough to defeat even Indra, the king of the heavens. Worship the lotus feet of the best of the Raghu kings. By his mercy, the devout Vibhishana became the king of Lanka, although he was not in the least interested in the position. Such are the wondrous activities of the Lord that even the Muslim Yavanas are eager to hear of his pastimes. For all time he carries his bow for the suppression of the miscreants and cares for the subjects of his kingdom as his own children. By his mercy alone, all the residents of Ayodhya were transported to the spiritual sky in their self-same form and became permanent residents of Vaikuntha. Just worship the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Sri Raghavendra, who is eulogized in the Vedas as the Supreme Brahman. The Lord of the universe, Maheshwara, Lord Shiva, forgets his clothing, intoxicated by the nectar of chanting his holy name, and Lakshmi Devi is eternally engaged in massaging his lotus feet. Thus Murari Gupta recited and explained all the 8 nectarine verses composed by himself in praise of Sri Ramachandra. Sri Chaitanya was very satisfied with Murari Gupta, and he placed his lotus feet upon the head of Murari in blessing. The Lord said, "Listen, dear Gupta, by my blessing you will eternally serve the lotus feet of Sri Ramachandra, and whoever takes your shelter and association for even a single moment will easily attain the lotus feet of Sri Rama." The devotees resounded their loud approval upon hearing the Lord shower his blessings on Murari Gupta. In this way, the magnanimous Lord dispensed boons. Dispensed boons to his dear devotees. His associates always surround him. They are like bees eternally attracted to the nectar emanating from the lotus feet of the Lord. Suddenly a leper appeared in the assembly and came before the Lord. He threw himself down on the ground like a stick, groaning in pain. Then getting up, he lifted his arms high and began to wail loudly. He said, "O merciful Lord, you have risen like the sun over this earth, only to dissipate the sufferings of this material life. Your compassionate nature is always moved by the distress of others, and so I have come to you. I am burning in the pain of leprosy. Kindly tell me how I may be relieved." However, when the leper had finished speaking, the Lord addressed him angrily with a thundering voice. He said, go away from here. Just seeing you incurs sin. Even if a very pious man just sees your face, that day will bring him only woe. You are a wretched sinner and a Vaishnava offender, and surely much more suffering is in store for you. If you cannot even tolerate this pain, you contemptuous reprobate, then how are you going to live through the sufferings of Kumbhipaka hell? A Vaishnava is so pure that just by uttering his name, one can cleanse the entire universe. Lord Brahma takes great pleasure in singing panegyrics on the qualities and activities of the Vaishnava, and one easily attains the association of the inconceivable Supreme Lord Sri Krishna simply by serving the Vaishnava. In fact, nothing is superior to the worship of a Vaishnava. Can somebody bring some water? In fact, nothing is superior to the worship of a Vaishnava. The Srimad Bhagavatam unequivocally explains that a Vaishnava is dearer to Sri Krishna than even elevated personalities like Sri Ananta Sesha, Lakshmi Devi, Lord Brahma, or even Lord Shiva. Thank you. The Srimad Bhagavatam states, "O Uddhava, you and my devotees are more dear to me than anyone else. Although Brahma is my son, Shiva my partial expansion, Shankarshan my brother, and Lakshmi Devi my wife, they are not so dear as you are to me. What to speak of others? You are dearer to me than even my own self." So anyone who offends a Vaishnava and criticizes him has to suffer terrible consequences, life after life. A person's piety, education, and austerity are all rendered worthless by criticism of a Vaishnava, and should the offender attempt to worship Sri Krishna, then this will also be useless, as the Lord will certainly refuse to accept such offerings. Mother Earth feels blessed when the Vaishnava dances ecstatically upon her. In every direction that he glances, the Vaishnava destroys nescience and sin. If when dancing, the Vaishnava lifts his arms toward the sky, then he waves away any ill fortune in the heavenly abodes. Such an elevated devotee is Srivas Pandit, and you are so demoniac that you have offended him. Your leprosy is just a mere reminder of your offenses. The actual punishment is yet to come, to be meted out by Yamaraj, the god of death. Therefore I do not even want to see you, and surely I am not the one to deliver you. The leper quietly heard the chastisement of the Lord. Then with utmost humility and meekness, holding straw in his teeth, he began to speak. He prayed, "In my ignorance I have destroyed myself. Delirious with a material disease, I have grievously criticized and offended a Vaishnava. For this heinous act, I have rightly received my painful dues. Now, my Lord, pray think of my deliverance. It is the nature of saintly personalities to heal the suffering of the wretched and forgive the blasphemers. Therefore I beg to take shelter of you, but if you turn me away, who will save me? You know the penances for the different sinful activities, so as you are a kind father to all, please tell me what presences will eradicate my offenses." As I have sown the seeds of Vaishnava aparad, so I have painfully harvested my grief. The Lord replied, "Leprosy for an offender is just his first punishment. It is only the beginning. The worst is yet to come. Yamaraj has 8,40,000 types of excruciating punishments awaiting the offenders. You should go right away to Srivas Pandit and throw yourself at his feet. It was Srivas Pandit whom you offended, and so you can be excused by his mercy alone. If a thorn is stuck in the foot, then it has to be picked out by another thorn, not that the shoulders have to be treated. This is the only means for your reprieve. Srivas Pandit is very elevated and intelligent. If you beg him, then he will surely forgive you. The devotees express their loud approval of the Lord's perfect and honest instructions. The leper paid his obeisances to the Lord, and the devotees had hurried off to see Srivas Pandit. Srivas Pandit, out of his causeless mercy, exonerated the leper from all offenses and saved him from the worst of fates. The Lord had clearly described the horrific results of offending a Vaishnava. In spite of hearing this, if a person is still so foolish to indulge in criticism and blasphemy of the Vaishnavas, then Sri Chaitanya will personally mete out the due punishment. If one sees two Vaishnavas quarreling, then one should never think that something is amiss or that there is enmity and malice between them. Such quarreling is in fact pleasing to the Lord and is transcendental. The arguments and abuses exchanged between Rukmini Devi and Satyabhama Devi, although sounding like serious fights, are factually not so, because they are forever united in their service to their common Lord and Master. There is no enmity between Vaishnavas. The Supreme Lord himself induces these fights due to his frolicsome nature. Nevertheless, if anyone foolishly sides with one Vaishnava against another, then he is doomed due to offending a Vaishnava. The Vaishnavas are the extensions of the limbs of the Lord. So how may one benefit by serving him with one hand and inflicting pain upon him with the other? To become steady in devotional service, one should develop the vision that Sri Krishna and his devotees, the Vaishnavas, are non-different, and then immersed in this perception, one should serve the Lord and his dear devotees. One can then easily cross the ocean of nescience. One who glorifies, hears, and understands these transcendental subject matters will always avoid Vaishnava aparad. The Lord remained a few days more in Shantipur, enjoying his stay in the house of Advaitacharya. Soon it was time to celebrate the auspicious appearance day of Srila Madhavendra Puri. Although in status there is no difference between Madhavendra Puri and Advaitacharya, yet Advaitacharya always considered himself the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Unquestionably, Gaurasundar is personally present eternally in the body of Srila Madhavendra Puri. His devotion to the Supreme Lord is unparalleled, and by the grace of Sri Krishna, the transcendental potencies of the Lord were manifest in Madhavendra Puri. Kindly hear attentively how Advaitacharya became the disciple of Sri Madhavendra Puri. Before the advent of Sri Chaitanya in this world, the entire planet was bereft of any devotional feelings towards the Supreme Lord. Yet even then, Srila Madhavendra Puri, by the special mercy of Sri Chaitanya, was constantly experiencing devotional ecstasy. All the ecstatic symptoms would manifest upon his person. Internally, he was so completely immersed in meditation upon the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna that he was unmindful of what he was doing. While walking on the streets, suddenly he would start to dance very gracefully and chant the holy name. Sometimes, due to intense devotional feelings, he would be stunned and go into a spiritual coma, lasting several hours. Again, at times, experiencing acute love and separation, he would cry, shedding torrential tears that gushed out like the river Ganga in spate. But then there were instances when he would break out into loud peals of laughter, and being intoxicated by the nectar of Krishna Prema, he would be unaware that he had lost the clothes he had been wearing. Then there were instances where he would break out into loud peals of laughter, and being intoxicated by the nectar of Krishna Prema, he would be unaware that he had lost the clothes he had been wearing. Srila Madhavendra Puri spent his days happily relishing his sublime relationship with Sri Krishna. However, the absence of devotion amongst the general populace disturbed him and made him morose. Feeling great compassion, he thought deeply on how to alleviate this suffering of the people. He arrived at the conclusion that the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna must appear. At that time, the society had neither interest nor understood the importance of celebrating night-long kirtan festivals glorifying the pastimes of Sri Krishna. However, the people would stay up nights listening to songs about the demigoddess Mangala Chandi and consider this a perfect religious activity. The only gods they knew were demigods such as Shashti and Vishahari, and they worshipped these demigods with much fanfare and ostentation. Many persons simply desired to increase their wealth and dynasty. To achieve this end, they worshipped demons and ghosts with offerings of wine and animal flesh. Their fondest enjoyment was to listen to banal songs of equally mundane songsters. It was truly a sign of great piety if someone would utter the name of Sri Hari, Govinda, or Pundari Kaksha just once at the time of the morning bath. People were so steeped in the mode of ignorance and deluded by Sri Krishna's illusory potency Maya that they had no concept of what or who is a Vaishnava, what is Krishna Kirtan, and why do devotees dance and even weep in ecstasy during Kirtan. Srila Madhavendra Puri was deeply pained by the godlessness of the people, yet he found no one to speak to. Thinking that sannyasis would be sympathetic to his concern because of the renounced order, he would approach them. But to his dismay, he found them polluted by the desire to become one with the Supreme, so he gave up further attempts to talk to them. He felt forlorn. He had no place to turn where he could discuss the topics of Sri Krishna's pastimes. Learned scholars, yogis, hermits, and even sannyasis were never heard speaking any instructions Learned scholars, yogis, hermits, and even sannyasis were never heard speaking any instructions guiding the people to serve the Supreme Lord. All of them were only interested in exhibiting their so-called learning by presenting logic and argument. In fact, they had become agnostics, refusing to accept and revere the deity forms of the Supreme Lord. Seeing these negative conditions and finding himself all alone, Srila Madhavendra Puri decided to live in the forest away from such a fallen society. Srila Madhavendra Puri observed, "Why am I roaming among such people searching for a Vaishnava? How can I meet one amongst them if they themselves have no appreciation for a Vaishnava? Therefore, let me just go to the forest and live there. There at least I will not have to associate with the non-devotees." About the time he had made up his mind to withdraw from society, by divine arrangement he met Sri Advaitacharya, who was also greatly afflicted for the very same reason. Advaita felt despondent upon seeing the people's empty and meaningless existence, their lives devoid of devotion to the Supreme Lord. In the meanwhile, and in spite of such reverse conditions, Sri Advaitacharya, by the Lord's mercy alone, had continued to preach about devotional service to Sri Krishna. His discourses on the Gita and Bhagavatam always stressed devotional service to Sri Krishna, which is in fact the essential truth of these books. Therefore, when Srila Madhavendra Puri came to the house of Sri Advaita, it was a wonderful meeting of two highly elevated Vaishnavas. When Sri Advaita saw Srila Madhavendra Puri, recognizing all the signs of saintliness in him, he immediately fell to the ground offering his obeisances. Srila Madhavendra Puri picked up Sri Advaita and embraced him warmly, drenching him with tears of spiritual ecstasy. They sat down together and entered and entered the unlimited nectar ocean of Krishna's pastimes. They forgot themselves and everything else, talking to each other about Sri Krishna. Srila Madhavendra Puri was such an elevated devotee and lover of Krishna that just by seeing a blackish cloud, he would become unconscious due to uncontrollable spiritual agitation. Hearing the name of Sri Krishna would bring him immediate ecstasy, and roaring loudly, he would manifest various symptoms of divine love. Sri Advaita would see all these Vaishnava qualities in Srila Madhavendra Puri. He was extremely pleased to meet him, and so he wanted to hear spiritual instructions from him. This was how the two spiritual stalwarts met. Since that time, Sri Advaita Acharya had always celebrated the appearance day of Srila Madhavendra Puri with great joy and festivity, leaving aside all other work. So now he applied himself fully to commemorate this special occasion. Sri Chaitanya and his associates were also most happy to join in the celebration, especially upon seeing how vigorously Sri Advaita went about decorating and making endless preparations for the celebration. Necessary requirements began pouring in from different people, clearly indicating just how many persons were attracted to the saintly qualities of Srila Madhavendra Puri. The devotees enthusiastically distributed different duties among themselves according to their capabilities to help with the preparations. Okay, I'm just... It was time to celebrate the auspicious appearance day of Srila Madhavendra Puri. Sri Sachimata accepted the responsibility for all the cooking. The housewives gathered around her and began to get things ready. Sri Nityananda, who was always self-satisfied, wanted to serve and worship such a special Vaishnava. One devotee expressed his desire, "I want to make all the sandalwood paste." Another said, "I will make the flower garlands." "I will fetch the water," said another. "Then give me the duty to wash and clean the floors." And yet another, Oh, wait a minute. One devotee expressed his desires. "I want to make all the sandalwood paste." Another said, "I will make the flower garlands." "I will fetch the water," said another. "Then give me the duty to wash and clean the floors," said yet another. Another devotee said, "All right then, let me wash the feet of all the Vaishnavas." Everywhere the devotees were very busy. Some were spreading multicolored cloth awnings overhead and tying the corners to nails. Others hurried to bring vegetables, oils, and so on to the kitchen. Many devotees began kirtan and dancing, and some joined in playing the gong and blowing conch shells. The devotees were jubilant, loudly chanting "Hari, Hari," while they enthusiastically performed their various services. The festive mood had everyone in a grip, and a happy tumult echoed everywhere. The loud chanting of the holy name, the blowing of conches, and the sounds of cymbal, gong, and drums transformed the house of Sri Advaita into Vaikuntha. The Lord was very satisfied with all the elaborate arrangements and went around the house looking at everything. At least 2 rooms were packed solid with bags of rice. The high stacks of firewood were like mountains. Several rooms were being used for cooking with innumerable pots strewn everywhere. A few rooms were filled with just lentil dal, and about 7 rooms were packed with clothes. Rooms and rooms were taken up with flat rice, chira, puffed rice, and leaf plates. It would be impossible to count the number of bananas, coconuts, and big lumps of molasses lying around. That's called gur. Then came the many, many rooms filled with an array of all sorts of vegetables, like patols, squashes, aubergine, codas, banana tree stem, alus, potatoes, shock, spinaches, and so on. Another spectacle that met the Lord's eyes were the rolls and rolls of large containers filled with milk, yogurt, and cream. Piled high were the sugar canes, and next to them were large vessels of oil, ghee, and salt. The miraculous display, which appeared as if from nowhere, is indescribable in its variety and volumes. Okay, The Lord was filled with wonder. He knew that it was not humanly possible for one person to accomplish all this at such short notice. The Lord said, "Such a manifestation of opulence cannot be the work of an ordinary mortal. Sri Advaita must be Mahesh Shiva. That is what I strongly feel. This miracle is possible only for Mahadev, Lord Shiva. Advaitacharya must be the incarnation of Lord Shiva." The Lord smiled and kept repeating these words. In this manner, through such intimation, the Lord revealed this actual spiritual identity of Advaitacharya. One who is pious will accept these statements of Sri Chaitanya with great spiritual joy, and those non-believers who have no faith in the Lord's words will be confronted by Advaitacharya himself as a horrendous, consuming conflagration. Although Sri Advaita is inherently very compassionate, and his shelter is as cooling as the embalming rays of millions of moons, he transforms himself into the terrible form of all-devouring death to those who have no faith in Sri Chaitanya. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedas, in fact all the scriptures clearly declare that if anyone utters the name of Lord Shiva, even without understanding the correct esoteric truth about such a great personality, still he is absolved of all sins immediately. Conversely, if there is such a wretched person who will denounce the glorious name of Lord Shiva and even feels depressed through envy upon hearing that wonderful name, then he is certainly thrown into an ocean of dark despondency. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sati says to her father, Prajapati Daksha, "My dear father, you are committing the greatest offense by envying Lord Shiva, whose very name, consisting of two syllables, Shi and Va, purifies one of all sinful activities. His order is never neglected. Lord Shiva is always pure, and no one but you envies him. He is famous as being completely pure-hearted, and you are trying to be inimical to such an exalted personality. Fie upon you! You embody misfortune." Sri Krishna himself asked how could any person worship him and not worship Lord Shiva? How can one develop love for Krishna if it disregards Shiva, who is so dear to Krishna? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna states, how can anyone render devotional service to me without worshiping my dear devotee Shiva in the proper devotional mood? A person who does not respect Shiva is certainly envious of the Vaishnavas and is a sinful reprobate. Further, the Skanda Purana declares, firstly, one should worship Sri Krishna, the cause of all causes, and then worship the best of all the devotees, Lord Shiva. Next, all the other demigods should be worshipped with great faith and devotion. Sri Advaitacharya is accepted by the greatest saintly personalities as Lord Shiva himself, because Sri Chaitanya gave sufficient and clear indications to establish this truth. Naturally, less intelligent persons raise clamorous objections against such truths. Unable to gauge the transcendental potencies of Sri Advaitacharya, they perish. Now, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Advaitacharya is described as Mahavishnu, but Srila Guru Maharaj has explained that they are very close, Mahavishnu and Lord Shiva, to consider, because when the Lord, Mahavishnu, glances over the material nature and impregnates the living entities into that material nature. He does not directly touch the material nature, but his glance comes out as Lord Shiva. So the Lord glances, and Lord Shiva is his personified glance in the form of Shambhu. So in this way, Guru Maharaj explained that actually there's a close relationship between Lord Shiva and Mahavishnu. And Advaita Acharya in the Chaitanya Bhagawat is said to be Lord Shiva, and in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is mentioned as Mahavishnu. But actually the two are very close. Further, the Skanda Purana declares, firstly, one should worship Sri Krishna, the cause of all causes, and then worship the best of the demigods, Lord Shiva. Next, all the other demigods should be worshipped with great faith and devotion. Sri Advaita Acharya is accepted by the greatest saintly personalities as Lord Shiva himself, because Sri Chaitanya gave sufficient and clear indications to establish this truth. Naturally, less intelligent persons raise clamorous objections against such truths. Unable to gauge the transcendental potencies of Sri Advaita Acharya, they perish. Thus the Lord went around taking stock of all the bountiful arrangements, although it is impossible for me as the author to note them all down in complete detail. Such was the elaborate array. The Lord was very pleased, and he began to glorify Sri Advaita to everyone. The Lord then returned to the place of the kirtan, and his presence immediately accelerated the enthusiasm of the kirtan, drowning the devotees in a deluge of divine nectar. Devotees danced in every direction, singing and clapping, their uncontained joy increasing with every passing moment. Clearly discernible and far above all other reverberation was the singing of the holy names of Godhead. The devotees were now shining with even greater effulgence, their bodies decorated with sandalwood paste and flower garlands. The associates of the Lord were all very near and dear to him, and their joyous singing of the holy name spread everywhere, purifying the entire universe. Sri Nityananda, with his tall, impressive stature, like that of a powerful wrestler, danced and pranced about like a little boy, chuckling with pure innocent glee. Sri Advaita Acharya was totally absorbed in dancing and unaware of the passage of time. Haridas Thakur and all the other devotees danced and sang jubilantly. Then, after first inspiring everyone else to dance, Sri Chaitanya joined with all the devotees in the joyful dancing. Exuberantly dancing, the devotees encircled him and kept him there in the center. The whole day passed in the ecstasy of kirtan and dancing, and finally the Lord sat down with all the devotees. Sri Advaita begged permission from the Lord to prepare for the feasting, and then busied himself making all the necessary arrangements for the prasadam of the Vaishnavas. Soon the Lord sat down to eat with his entire group of devotees. As usual, the devotees sat around him, everyone wanting him to be in the center. Like the many shining luminaries in the dark purple sky were the devotees, and the Lord arose on the horizon, looking more effulgent than a million moons. Sri Sachi Mata had prepared a delicious feast in honor of Srila Madhavendra Puri. Soon the Lord sat down to eat with his entire group of devotees. As usual, the devotees sat around him, everyone wanting him to be in the center. Like the many shining luminaries in the dark purple sky were the devotees, and the Lord rose on the horizon, looking more effulgent than a million moons. Sri Sachi Mata had prepared a delicious feast in honor of Srila Madhavendra Puri with an indescribable variety of rice preparations. vegetables, and sweets. The Lord relished the transcendental delicacies and spoke about the glories of Srila Madhavendra Puri between his mouthfuls. It would be difficult to say which type of nectarine mouthful he relished more. The Lord said, if one is fortunate enough to taste this wonderful prasadam in honor of the appearance day of Srila Madhavendra Puri, then one is immediately showered with loving devotion to Sri Krishna. The Lord then got up from prasad and after rinsing his lotus mouth, returned to sit down. Sri Advaita brought sandalwood paste and many flower garlands and placed them all before the Lord. First the Lord garlanded and smeared sandalwood paste on Sri Nityananda and Swarup Damodar Prabhu with great satisfaction. Then one by one the Lord garlanded and smeared sandalwood paste on all the assembled Vaishnavas with his very own hands. The devotees were extremely happy to have received these items directly from the Lord. They all loudly cried out the Lord's holy name, making a joyous clamor that is impossible to describe. Surely there is no way to gauge the pinnacles of ecstasy to which Sri Advaita climbed, because above everything he had the Lord of Vaikuntha himself as his honored guest. How is it humanly possible to fully describe all these transcendental pastimes of the Lord? The different activities the Lord performs within the span of a single day cannot be recorded by anyone, even if he be allowed a period of 1,000,000 years for the completion. Like a bird flying in the vast vault of the sky is unable to find its limits, similarly the pastimes of the Lord are unlimited, and one is enabled to know only as much as the Lord empowers one to see and understand. The wooden doll is completely controlled by the puppeteer, so also I can say only as much as the Lord prompts me to say. I do not even properly know the chronological order of these pastimes, yet somehow or other I am writing the glories of the Lord. I beg humbly at the lotus feet of all the Vaishnavas to forgive me for my offenses in this effort of writing. One who listens to these transcendental topics will certainly attain loving devotion to Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu are my life and soul. I, Vrindaban Das, humbly offer this song at their lotus feet. Jai. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Jaravaya Maravaya Keshavaya Nama Jaravaya Maravaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaite Vignanasha Vistapuran, Jaite Vignanasha Vistapuran, Echai Gosai Jar Muitanadan, Echai Gosai Jar Muitanadan, Tasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras, Tasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras, Tare Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas, Tare Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas, Janame Janame More Amilas, Janame Janame More Amilas, Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas, Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas, Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash, Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash, Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindaban, Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindaban, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan, Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamudan, Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamudan, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan, Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamudan, Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamudan, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Goranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sarashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sarashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishordas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Marga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dash Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Kuladvip Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Vrindaban Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan Shyam Kuna Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Madam Ki Jai. Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Jo Ki Jai. Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Shri Nishingadev Ki Jai. Bhakta Prabhara Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj Ki Jai.